Okay, thank you for coming to my talk here. So my name's David Cadron. I'm a web developer, but I would say like maybe as a hobby I follow a lot of nutrition news and stuff like that. So what am I here to talk about? So in the last 9 months, less than 9 months, I've lost 90 pounds. Started on a low carb keto diet and ended up kind of moving more towards a carnivore diet. And so I kind of wanted to like brain dump a lot. So I have a lot to cover. So we'll get started. So I lost 90 pounds in a little bit less than 9 months. My goal is 114 pounds in a year, so I'm not there yet, but it's in progress. So what happened is I got really motivated. At one point I watched this show that like, I'm like, okay, I can take control of my life, I can do this. And on day 3, I planned out a year-long weight loss journey. On day 3 of the diet, I kind of said, okay, maybe these are my goals and see how closely I can watch this stuff. I had also planned an exercise routine with this, which I think when it comes to exercise, it's more on willpower rather than, it's all about building positive habits, but basically I've been able to be somewhat successful with mostly jogging, weightlifting and stuff like that. I kind of fell off, but I've been able to keep with the diet. My success and discipline on the diet has helped me build other positive habits and get rid of non-performing habits. So I don't call it bad habits because one of the things I dropped was video games. And I don't think video games are a bad habit, but as I'm being intentional with my life, it's something that I did drop. So I'm here to share my beliefs, tips and tricks and challenges encountered. So here's the thing that I want to cover is like, listen, like these are my beliefs. Most of the slide is going to be completely against like what the mainstream understanding of nutrition is. So just take what I say. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm not a medical expert and I don't have any formal training. So one of the reasons why I still wanted to cover this, and my wife is recording it on video here. So one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this is like, I'm not even here to convince you of like, oh, this is how I understand things, and like, oh, your science and data convinced me to see this. I just wish I would have had this information like 10 years ago, so I would have like, oh, there's this other way of thinking about things. Now I can go ahead and do my own research, because that's one of the things that you find is that you don't even know about an alternative, and so you never even investigate it. So I just want to throw this stuff out here like, hey, okay, well, at least now I know about this. So the science of food and health. You hear a lot about studies every time, like in the news and all that stuff. So most studies on diet and food intake are based on self-reported eating habits. They require the person to generalize food intake over the last year. This is highly unreliable and error-prone. A questionnaire can be over 20 pages long, covering over 100 different foods. Then they ask you, well, so I have some examples. How often do you drink beer in the summer? Okay, well, you get like a bunch of selections, so go ahead and try to, guess what that might be a little bit easier. But then we run into something like this. How often do you eat beef hamburgers or cheeseburgers? Like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. You run into one problem. So I eat a pound of hamburger every day. Okay, so I would say, and sometimes I add cheese to it. Well, that could be a beef hamburger or a cheeseburger. But the problem comes in the standard American diet. We add a lot of other, we have the bread. And so if you're looking at it from a low carb perspective and you're saying, oh, I'm avoiding the carbs, you're asking the same question to the same group of people, but someone who's on a very specific strict diet is going to have a completely different health outcome than someone who's eating the traditional cheeseburger, but it has, the bread and whatever else. Maybe they're eating fries with it, they got it from McDonald's, and here I am eating like organic grass-fed plain hamburger, and I'm just throwing a little bit of mustard on there. So that's one problem where they look at the studies, then they follow, and it's like over the last 12 months. So this was just a contextual for the summer this question from the questionnaire I took covered the last 12 months. It's just, and then, so basically they take these questionnaires from a large group of people and then track, like, oh, okay, well you had a heart attack later in the year, and so that's how they correlate this. But the problem is why this is so unreliable is just because people who are on the diet are actually being specific with what they eat. Okay, so the myth on calories. The mainstream belief is that to lose weight you need to burn more calories than you take in. It's also called calories in, calories out. I believe calories matter zilch. I do not care about calories at all. So, why? Well, and Why Do You Overeat by Zoe Harcum, she investigates the calorie myth. So the thing is your body doesn't even know what a calorie is. So you probably heard about the thermodynamic argument, like, oh, the calorie is a unit of energy and we track foods with it. But your body doesn't know what a calorie is. There's no such thing as a calorie receptor. One of the mainstream beliefs is that there's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. So this isn't just wildly inaccurate, but it's outright worthless concept. So one of the things that she covers in the book is that, well, different people store fat differently. Like when you look at a pound of fat, there's more than just like adipose tissue that's like storing the fat, and then people store fat like in different concentrations. So like it's even difficult to be like, well, what is a pound of fat? Because there's still veins and all this other stuff running through here. So your body's metabolic rate is always going to be shifting. So this is kind of going against calorie counting. Like, okay, so you need to cut your calories by 500 calories each day, and then you're going to lose, X amount of pounds at the end of the week. Well, how are you supposed to be accurate calorie counting when your body's metabolic rate is always shifting? You're shooting from the hip anyway. Like I have a lot of examples why calorie counting doesn't work. So counting calories is not a sustainable solution. After so long cutting calories, your body simply adjusts its metabolic rate to be lower. This happens with the Biggest Loser contestants. So they go through the Biggest Loser, they're on a very strict low-fat diet, do a bunch of exercises, but then like all of them after they get done with the Biggest Loser, they get out of that show with such a horrible metabolic rate. Even with hours of exercise, the metabolic rate's absolutely horrible, and they end up gaining the weight back. The big thing is the concept moves attention towards calories and away from nutrition. So my argument is we got to look at nutrition. So what really matters is hormones. This is also called the endocrinology model. So basically, insulin is the fat storage hormone. So if you're looking at this and you're like, Dave, you're saying like calories don't matter at all, but I can eat a lot and I can still gain weight, or if I don't eat as much, I'll still lose weight. Okay, well let's talk about hormones a little bit. Insulin is the fat storage hormone. Your body releases insulin when blood sugar levels are high. Insulin buries glucose into fat cells. This is how fat storage works. So you're like, okay, I have two excellent examples of why insulin is more important to fat gain and loss than calories. So it's common for people with type 2 diabetes to inject insulin. It's recommended that people who inject insulin rotate the injection sites. Why? You can find pictures of this. People who inject insulin into the same site, like there will be fat storage very localized in that specific area. That is insulin telling those local cells to store fat, and you'll get like a fat pouch. One interesting thing, story, type 1 diabetes, it's the body's inability to utilize insulin, and it causes massive weight loss. That's usually, from what I've heard, it usually happens in the teenage years. What happens is you have like a young kid, 16, and their normal diet, everything's working fine. All of a sudden, they start dropping weight like crazy. They're always hungry. They're eating tons of food. They're just dropping weight like anything. It's extremely dangerous, extremely life-threatening when untreated. But it's just another example that calories don't matter. You have someone with type 1 diabetes, it doesn't matter how many cupcakes, it doesn't matter how much food that they eat. Their body is not utilizing insulin. They're losing the weight, and it's extremely dangerous. So there's two examples why calories don't matter. So, all right, so let's look at low carb. So getting low carb is just about restricting carbohydrates to reduce your insulin from spiking. Potential ways, okay, misspelled. Potential ways to go lower carb. So you're simply just avoiding white breads and simple grains. You're avoiding added sugar foods. You're staying away from candy, cake, ice cream, etc. And you switch to complex or unprocessed carbohydrates like vegetables. Benefits, you should feel healthier and better and you lose weight. It should avoid blood sugar spikes that make you feel like crap. So there's a couple cons too. There's lots of processed food that can still fit under the low carb umbrella, but still be unhealthy. If you're prone to overeating or binge eating, you still might, and you might still have sweet cravings. So I've been hit with both of these too. I am the kind of person that I could just be on the computer. Heck, I would have a bag of gummy bears and I could just like keep on eating while I'm being entertained on the computer or something. And so I think it's also my personality is just, I would binge eat, and then sweet cravings, like a sugar addict, basically. So going low carb is great, it'll help you lose weight, but those two things you might still fall into. So, all right, well, what about keto? So the idea behind keto is the goal of cutting carbohydrates to an intake of an average on 20 grams or less. Your body starts producing this thing called ketones. It's a second form of energy metabolism. Basically, your body can create ketones from glucose from stored fat, ketones and glucose from stored fat. This is when you are in what they call the fat burning mode. In keto, or also called nutritional ketosis, your body will handle a delicate balancing act of producing ketones and managing your blood glucose levels. It takes a time adjustment, so it could take up to a week, but for full efficient adaptation, it could take 4 to 6 weeks. So the thing is, I've talked to other people because keto is very trendy, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've done keto. I'm like, oh, well, how long? Oh, boy, I've just been on it for a week so far. Well, the problem is you're not even adjusted in a week. And the other thing is, you can test if you're in keto. So, like, the thing is there's urine, blood, and breath testers available. Blood is the most accurate. So basically, you poke yourself like a diabetic, you get a ketone strip, and you can get a reading to know if you're in ketosis or not. It's the most accurate way, and so I encourage everyone, because that's the thing is I've talked to people before who have been on keto, maybe they failed in the diet in some way or they haven't lost weight. It's like, okay, well, were you testing on keto? Oh no, I didn't know you could test. Well, you can. So, yep, and it's a $50 starter kit. Poke yourself occasionally. You don't have to do it every day, but just sometimes, just to do it. Like one of the times I ate a meal, which was a keto meal, hamburger, whatever. I tested my insulin about a half hour, 45 minutes after my meal, and I was still in ketosis. So that's how you know you're doing it right. Because right after a meal, that's when you would get kicked out of ketosis. All right, so keto part 2. So what are some of the pros? Fast weight loss. Your body lets go of extra stored weight, water weight. So you get a huge drop on the scale at the beginning. You're going to be eating healthier food, stabilized insulin control. It's easier to implement intermittent fasting, which I'll talk more on later. Cons. So you need to more carefully manage water. Supplementing with salt's a great idea. Full adaptation can take a long time. This is the point where social eating will be affected. Keto isn't for everyone, and some people are negatively affected, so listen to your body. Okay, so let's talk about carnivore now. Most people have heard of keto. Has anyone heard of carnivore? Okay, so carnivore. Well, during my 9 months on the diet and listening to my body, I started to realize that I would naturally gravitate towards certain foods. Hamburger, eggs, bacon, they just made me feel fuller and more satiated. There are a few interpretations of a carnivore diet. It could be an all-meat diet. It could be an animal-based diet where you're doing meat, but you can still have like milk and eggs. It would be extremely difficult to be 100% carnivore since most people at least like using sauces and spices to help flavor their food. But here's what I've done. Meat will make up the main or bulk of my meal. I will add sides of vegetables if it sounds good to me, which happens to be mostly peppers. And I don't eat vegetables because of any preconceived notions of being healthy, or I should. That's a big underline there. Like, my belief is that basically only eat vegetables and greens if you want them, you like the flavor, and you want to, you know, that sounds good to eat with this meat. I would not approach it at all like, oh, this is the healthy thing to do. And I'll get to that next slide. Benefits. You will simply not be able to overeat or binge. It will be really tough to, trust me. So a lot of times, like, I'll eat, like, okay, I'm gonna have these hot dogs, and then I'm making some sausages or whatever, and then like, okay, now I'm gonna eat my hamburger, and like, you just can't overeat. Your body gets naturally satiated, it gets really full, because you're eating like this high fat, nutritionally rich meat that you just can't overeat it. It's not like if you were eating ice cream or cake and you can just eat loads of it. That's, yeah. So it's the most minimal insulin response. So there's basically very little insulin spike, if any at all. So it leads to the quickest weight loss. There's reported muscle toning benefits, improved moods and depression. There's a couple of people who are famous. Jordan Peterson is one who suffered from severe depression, and he went carnivore, and that has helped him. His daughter has had, there's a video that she's done, she's had a whole bunch of like lifetime issues, and those didn't go away until she went carnivore. So the cons, you will be a social outcast. All right, no vegetables, but nutrition. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. I would encourage you to do your own research, but the basic goes like this. Animals have a defensive mechanism built in for survival. They can move, run, and fight to defend themselves. Plants cannot, so they have evolved defensive mechanisms to avoid being eaten. Oxalates, alkaloids, silanogenic glycosides. So I can't explain all this. Like, I've watched this in videos where they talk about this. This video is probably my favorite. Goji Man, this guy he's a vegan, and he does this 10-minute video talking about oxalates, which are basically chemicals in plants that are very toxic to your body. So it's just, that's how plants have evolved to avoid being eaten by herbivores. So those are two interesting videos. But one thing is, so basically, well, yeah. So one thing to keep in mind is that also, okay, so like, well, Dave, we know these are the recommended daily values of vitamins and nutrients that we need to get. So, well, one thing to keep in mind is that's based off the standard American diet. So if you're already in a keto or a carnivore diet, you're not eating the standard American diet. One of the things that happens is high blood sugar, it inhibits your vitamin uptake. So one of the theories is that, well, if you're on keto or carnivore, your actual vitamin uptake, like, we don't actually know. That hasn't been studied. It's only been studied if you're on the standard American diet. Okay, then two more quick things. What about fiber, and what about healthy gut micro? I didn't want to dedicate slides to this yet, but basically fiber, I don't believe in fiber either. There's the common belief in fiber is that, well, you need fiber, it's going to help food move through your system and blah, 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 blah. So is that really a good thing, is what I would argue. So basically the idea of not doing fiber is that you're not forcing food to go through your system. So it actually takes more time, which is what you want, your body to be able to digest the food that you ate. So since I've been on my diet, I haven't had any problems going to the bathroom or anything, and it's only been like the times that I've actually slipped up in my diet where you feel like gassy or bloating, which has happened to me a couple times. But that's one of the really great things about being carnivore, in my opinion, is that there's not a lot of fiber, but like I probably go number 2, like maybe I would say like every 3 or 4 days. So it's different than like the mainstream, which is like I think usually like you go number 2 like every day, but at the same time you don't have to experience like this bloating or this fullness feeling that you know have on a standard American diet. And I think that's a benefit. And yeah, there's probably more I can go on, but so the healthy gut microbiome, I probably need to do more research into that one. What I've heard as an excellent argument against this is that people say that you need a healthy gut microbiome to help you digest these plant-based foods. So basically like, oh, our gut naturally isn't going to be good at digesting these really tough vegetables and plants. And so you need to take probiotic, prebiotic, so you can have this healthy gut microbiome to be able to digest this plant food. But the problem is if you're carnivore, you don't necessarily need to even worry about your gut microbiome because you're not eating things that your body wouldn't be able to digest normally. When you're eating just meat, it's already in an easily digestible form for you. So, all right, so other tools, tips and tricks, intermittent fasting. So if you haven't heard of fasting at all, I found out about fasting in 2016. I've done some different implementations. I'm going to be running out of time real quick, but yes, you can go without eating for several days. I was very shocked when I heard about this. I heard it from like my uncle who had said that every 2 days a week he would not eat, which was just absolutely astounding to me. And then I got home after I heard that, I'm like, what? Started going
fasting, in other words.
Fasting? Yeah, yep. He would go 2 days without eating. I'm like, is that even possible? I didn't know it was possible to go a whole day without eating. And I started doing a whole bunch of research, and then you see like actually how healthy fasting is. So a quick way to do that is intermittent fasting, which is simple as skipping breakfast. Then they also rate these in hours, so like 18:6 or 24. That's basically saying you're fasting for a portion of the day, and then you're going to have an eating window of 6 to 4 hours. And then, well, what happens when you fast? You're giving your body time to kind of recover from the digestion process, which is actually quite stressful on the body. So extended fasting, multi-day fasting. One of the big things is autophagy. So what is autophagy? That's what they call your cells eating each other, your body consuming itself. But it's one of the most important biological processes. And I believe it was 2015, the Nobel Prize for Medicine went to a Japanese doctor, I believe, who studied autophagy. So what we find in autophagy is it helps in the reduction of disease, like Alzheimer's. But basically what your body is doing when you're going through periods of fasting, it's finding the damaged cells, and it's breaking those down into their lower metabolic parts so it can be reused. So I would say no cheat days. I have, in the 9 months, I have not had any cheat days. Depending on personality, I know some people can. For me, it's just, I couldn't. Like if I did one cheat day, I would not be able to, I think it would just destroy me. So this is really interesting too. What is real hunger? There's tons of different false signs of hunger. Just some examples are low blood sugar. It could be like a stomach irritation. Maybe you ate some food earlier in the day, and then you think you're feeling hungry, but it could just be your stomach lining being irritated. And then it can also just be routine conditioning. So last night was a busy day. I worked and then came straight to bar camp. I got home at 11 p.m. As soon as I walk into the kitchen, I get hungry, but it's at 11 p.m. and I told my wife, I'm like, oh, I'm feeling hungry, but I know it's because I walked into the kitchen, but I kind of wanted to fast today. She's like, well, why don't you go upstairs, finish your presentation, and the feeling will go away. Yeah, sure enough, I went upstairs, started trying to finish my presentation. I didn't have a feeling of hunger 5 minutes later. And so I did not eat yesterday, skipped breakfast this morning, and like a really good example where calories in, calories out wouldn't really explain for that, and I'm doing just fine. So do I take any supplements? And I just wanted to cover some of the things I do. And I wanted to underline this. This is when I remember. It's just like, there's pros and cons, like you hear different things about taking supplements or not, but I would supplement with iodine, B complex, magnesium, potassium. So basically electrolytes to help. And then I do add salt to water sometimes when I think of it. And it's not heavily salted water, but it's just a match taste. So I think that's all I got.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
No, I've been trying keto for 3 weeks. I did not have a massive weight loss in the beginning. I think the first week was 2 pounds, and most of the loss is 3 pounds in the 3 weeks.
Okay.
So that's more of an observation than a question, but.
Yep. Have you tested?
No.
Okay.
But I'm not into that. I'm fine with 2 to 3 pounds a week, so.
Well, I'm not saying, so there's a couple of different things I can say about your weight loss. So, yeah, 2 to 3 pounds a week is actually really great for weight loss. Like one of the things we have to remember when it comes to losing weight, your body doesn't actually want to lose weight. It's kind of an unnatural process to lose weight. Yeah, so going a slower, steady route is much better than going a lot of weight. But the reason why I want to say that you should be testing, especially initially, just to figure out if you're doing it right. Like the idea behind ketosis is not the weight loss, it's putting your body into nutritional ketosis. So you're actually burning ketones, which is argued a much better, healthier way than burning glucose for energy, right? So that would be one reason to test. The other thing that I would say, what was I gonna say? So you did 3 weeks. Oh yes, one of the doctors that I follow on YouTube, Eric Berg. Yeah, I should probably wrap up. But yeah, he talked about. You can stop recording.